Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Actually, we were discussing Alagaddupama Sutta during the last few weeks. And that being completed, I thought of taking another sutta, which is also quite interesting. And so this sutta is called Alagaddupama Sutta. This is the 22nd sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, the simile of the snake. Now, in this sutta, Buddha actually come up with so many different similes. So therefore, this whole sutta is included in the Opamavagga, where many suttas which are dealing with fair amount of similes are included. So in this sutta also you can understand, as we are continuing, there are many similes are included into explain the Dhamma. Now the occasion is when Buddha was residing at Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park, and at that time there was one monk called Arittha. So he had a pernicious view. So that is very much like going against the Buddha's teaching. So in Buddha actually has declared or has preached that particularly for monks, there are certain dangers are there in their conduct if they are not behaving properly. Basically some immoral conduct or certain wrong way of behaviors. Buddha has mentioned that if one is following such kind of immoral conduct, that's going to be a danger in one's path. That's going to be a danger, kind of a major hindrance in attainments. Now, this Venerable Arittha seems challenging that. So basically one area that Buddha highlighted is the danger in the typical sensuality, where the mundane people are involved with. Now, when we consider the sensuality and sexuality, that is certain areas that Buddha has preached Dhamma, we are covering certain aspects. Say, for example, if we consider the lay life, so Buddha mentioned about the 5 precepts, and the 3rd precept is related to the Kamesu Miccachara Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyam. Now, that means, so one is not overindulging in the sensual pleasures or sexual pleasures. Now it doesn't mean that one can't live a typical lay life. Husband and wife relationship is included. But overindulgence and harming the other party and going for someone else's wives or husbands, and those are fairly not recommended, and therefore kind of a guideline is given for the lay people for a harmless or kind of a moderate kind of sensuality. But on the other hand, when one becomes a monk, a complete celibacy is expected. So that is something different when compared with the lay life, where one is committing oneself for complete celibacy. So that's why in certain occasions Buddha has highly criticized if monk is involved with certain sexual activities. So it is even going to the complete abandonment of that monkhood. Say, for example, if a particular monk is involved with sexual intercourse with a woman, so that will be the end of his monk's life. His upasampada will be completely abolished in that moment. So likewise, complete celibacy is expected in the monk's life. And apart from that, there are many other areas where monks have to be sort of maintained. Where, say, for example, one is not using luxurious beds and luxurious furnitures, and say one is not eating at night, and then say not involved with various sightseeing, music, adornments, entertainments, etc. So those are, even though allowed for the typical lay people, those are also not allowed for monks. So likewise, there are fair amount of celibacy related precepts included in Monk's Vinaya. And those basically Buddha mentioned, if one is not following, if one is engaged in various sensual pleasures, so it can be an hindrance, it can be an obstacle, a danger for one's spiritual attainments. So those are called antarayika dhamma, where the dangers, the certain dangers, a list of actions are very much like listed in the monk's conduct, where monks have to be avoided. Now Venerable Aritta is very much like giving a opposite interpretation, and he mentioned that he understood the Dhamma, and there he mentioned, so whatever Buddha mentioned as dangerous for the monk's life, antarayika dhamma, he says that those are not danger. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. So this is very much like a challenge that he is making, and this Venerable is called Aritta. And then this pernicious view become somewhat popular, and then certain monks who really want to live a proper life, really want to live a celibate life, approach him and try to very much instruct him. Friend Aritta, do not say so. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One. It is not good to misrepresent the Blessed One. The Blessed One would not speak thus. For in many ways the Blessed One has stated how obstructive things are obstructions, and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them. Now basically likewise, again and again, so the other monks who are really wanting to maintain a celibate life and a kind of a simplified way of life, so they go and try to instruct Venerable Aritta. And by the way, this Aritta is very much adamant, and he doesn't want to listen to them. He simply maintains his wrong view. Maybe he is engaged with the same thing, practically also. On the other hand, he is strongly holding his wrong view. Now, Venerable monks are keep explaining certain dangers in the sensual pleasures. So this is a very common similes used in this sutta and various other suttas to explain the dangers of the sensual life or sensual pleasures. As I mentioned, this celibacy is very much oriented towards a monk's life or nun's life, where they have committed that they are going to live a celibate life. So therefore don't misunderstand that this is targeting lay people. Rather, this the similes and the whole sutta has a greater concern about the celibate life of a monk. So if he committed, if he sort of put the robe, and if he want to become a upasampada monk or nun, so that indicates he is maintaining kind of a commitment, and he has to adhere to that. So therefore Buddha again and again highlighted, so if you have made that commitment, so then please adhere to the rules, adhere to the Vinaya discipline, and therefore maintaining a celibate life is one important part of that. And therefore even at different levels, so that is being highlighted. As I mentioned, if one is going through sexual intercourse, he is no more a monk. If one touches a woman lustfully and sort of doing some sort of sensuality related activities apart from the sexual intercourse with the woman, that also being a huge kind of offense, where he has to go through a penance and probation. So those kinds of things are there in the monk's Vinaya or the discipline. And anyway, here these monks are now trying to convince, advocate or advise Venerable Aritta using various similes that Buddha already has mentioned. So one thing is called with a simile of a skeleton, Buddha has mentioned the dangers in this what you call sensuality. Now that is also a very interesting simile, so we'll go one by one about these various similes. Those are quite interesting. In certain other suttas like Potaliya Sutta, Buddha give a detailed explanation. Here in the book Bhikkhu Bodhi simply put them in short form. So the skeleton, the simile of the skeleton. So there Buddha explained that a dog who is with a lot of hunger and he is approaching a butcher's place. And that place there are very skillful butchers, and they assume that they are killing animals like cows, etc. And they quite skillful. They completely take out all the flesh of that animal, and only the blood available, bone. Now he is throwing to this particular dog who is approaching in search of food, who is quite hungry. But unfortunately that butcher is quite skillful, and he has taken the complete flesh from that bone, but still certain amount of blood is still available in that bone, but no flesh. He is now throwing that bone to this dog. But dog is quite interested about it, and he again and again lip it, try to get something out of that. But now Buddha is asking, is this dog going to allay his hunger? Going to be alright? Going to be able to overcome his hunger? And then monks answer, no, because that skillful butcher has taken all the flesh and nothing is there, even though it has some blood, so it doesn't give enough nutriment. So therefore his effort is useless. Ultimately he become further fainted because he is trying again and again. Ultimately he even go through certain more pain. So Buddha mentioned likewise monks, so these sensual pleasures are short-lived, does not give any kind of lasting happiness, and it can lead to further further suffering. So therefore monks don't engage with sensual pleasures. So that's the advice Buddha mentioned with respect to this simile. And then further he starts mentioning another simile with the simile of the piece of meat. Now this is another interesting simile. He says maybe a vulture or any other hawk like bird. Suppose he got a piece of meat and he is now trying to go to the sky, and the other vultures and other hawks, eagles, etc., they start noticing this particular bird who is now carrying piece of meat, and now they start following him. Now that you can understand, so it is the only one having a piece of meat. He somehow collected that, but there are many others who are in search of meat. So they understood that this particular bird is having piece of meat, and now they are following him in order to get the same thing by force. Now Buddha is asking, if this particular hawk, say, does not leave aside this piece of meat, what's going to happen? And then other monks are explaining, Bhante, then the other hawks, eagles, vultures, they come and attack this particular bird and he's going to die. Similarly monks, so all these sensual pleasures are something that all the people are trying to acquire, but only some people may be capable of having it, but anyway many others are looking for that. Many others are trying to get that. Many others are desiring for that. So always therefore the one who owns the various resources, say various sensual objects, they are in sort of a danger, because many others are in thirst of that, in search of that. So they go and attack, they go and try to obtain, they go and forcefully even take them. If that person does not leave it, so he will be in a big trouble, because the others are going to attack him. So this is quite common in even today's society. Say when a person become rich, he may have a lot of resources, maybe his garden, maybe his house, maybe he has a car, etc., etc. But many others are also in search of them, and they are trying to steal him, come and rob it. So he has to put a lot of security measures So that's why we need to have police and all the other security measures, because many others are in search of the same thing. And this particular man, if this man is a rich person, doesn't want to share with others, they may be even try and forcefully get it. So this is the nature of the sensual pleasures. So Buddha therefore advised, so they are very much like a piece of meat acquired by a bird. So if he is not letting go that, so then the person who owns it be in a kind of a trouble. And then there's another simile, with the simile of the grass torch. During the old days, we didn't have electricity, we don't have the typical electric lamps and the electric torch. Now people may probably have used kind of grass torch. Even in Sri Lanka, they collect certain coconut leaves and they bind it together, and the end of that they burn, and that can be used as a kind of a torch. This burning torch, grass torch or coconut leaf torch, when they are traveling at night. But here Buddha mentioned it very beautifully, what would happen if the wind is blowing in the opposite direction. That means when this person is going towards the south, for example, and from south direction the wind is blowing to the north direction. So that means where he is holding the torch being fueled from the wind, and ultimately if he doesn't let go the torch, it can even burn his hand, because it is burning. It's a burning torch, and again, and little by little it is coming towards his hand, because the whole leaves are slowly burning, and ultimately it becomes shorter and shorter. And if this person does not let go that, then he even burn his hand. So similarly, Buddha mentioned these sensual pleasures are short-lived, and the person who possesses them can subject to kind of a danger if he is trying to strongly hold it without letting go that, without abandoning that. This is another interesting simile that Buddha mentioned with respect to these sensual pleasures. And then further Buddha mentioned with the simile of the pit of coals. Simile of the pit of coals. Now here the idea is that, assume that Buddha actually has mentioned there is a coal pit, burning amber, and it is a very large pit. Even a person can be put into that. So inside what is available is the burning charcoal or burning amber. Now it even put the flames out. Now as two strong men capture another person to his arms, limbs, and now try to take him to that burning amber, to that pit of burning amber. And then Buddha is asking, what would be the reaction of that person being taken to the coal pit? And monks mention, so all his effort he may be trying to avoid that. All his effort he is trying to escape. And there again Buddha mentioned these sensual pleasures are like that. So they can burn oneself. When one is enjoying, it can burn oneself. So similar to this burning charcoal. So therefore one has to try going apart from that, going away from that. If not, one start burning from that. And then with the simile of the dream, that's another simile given. Now they are also very beautifully Buddha mentioned. Suppose monks, there is a person who is dreaming at night. He is now in a very beautiful garden and the flowers are there. Very beautiful wind is blowing and it's a shiny day and birds are singing and he is enjoying all the beauty of the sunshine, and many beautiful things are there, flowers, etc. And all of a sudden he wakes up, and then he understood, oh my God, it's just a dream. It is not something real. It is not that I am experiencing real, but it's a dream. Now probably you also may have such kind of experience, because sometimes when people are sort of suffering because of the winter, they may be expecting a very warm, very beautiful sunshine, and they really appreciate that, such kind of a climate. But during the winter, if you simply dream, thinking that you have such kind of a beautiful day, but unfortunately once you wake up at night, you understood, okay, it is not like that. It's quite snowy, or maybe a snowstorm is there. Unfortunately, it's a dream. So likewise, Buddha mentioned this sensual pleasures are like a dream. They doesn't give a real, they doesn't give a kind of a realistic experience. Rather, it is something that you fairly imagined. So there's another verse, very beautiful verse coming in the Nibbedika Sutta. Sankapparago purisassa kamo nate kamayani chitrani loke sankapparago purisassa kamo. So that means the sensual chords available in the world are not really the matter, or not really the point that we need to consider. Sankapparago purisassa kamo. It is the imagined kind of lustful thoughts that is giving lot of pleasure to the person. It is not mainly the contact with the other person, contact with the real other things that you really enjoy. But maybe before you enjoy that, so you imagine lot of things. I am going to be with him, I am going to be with her, this is how I am going to hold her hand, this is how I am going to enjoy, this is how I am going to buy a car, this is how I am going to travel with that car. So you have so much of imaginations. So imagined kind of satisfaction is involved. But once you buy that car, or once you marry that woman or man, maybe only for some time you may enjoy, but after that might not have the same amount of pleasure that you expected. But you expected a lot. So when we are considering the expectations going through in our mind, so that is giving us a lot of fantasies and fantasized kind of pleasure, imagined kind of pleasure. And that is what Buddha mentioned is the raga. Sankapparago purisassa kamo. So this imagined lustful experience is something that people are mostly enjoying. But when they are really going through that, it may not be the same amount that they imagined. So here also we can understand through the simile of the dream. So these sensual pleasures are like a dream. So you may enjoy a lot of things, but it is a dream. It is not real. And then Buddha further mentioned about another simile, with the simile of the borrowed goods. Now, there also a beautiful simile he mentioned. Now, suppose there's a poor person and he has some engagement, maybe with his family related or some relation related activity. Say it's a ceremony, but unfortunately he doesn't have enough appropriate clothes and ornaments to wear. So he go to a rich person and he asks to borrow what they have. Suppose they are giving a very beautiful cloth, maybe a coat and whatever, bracelet and whatever it is, today's terms. Now those expensive items, ornaments and clothes, now they borrow him, they lend him. And now this person wearing them and adorning them, now he is going to the party, to this occasion. Now the other people who are attending the party may also notice this particular person. They might think, okay, he is a rich person because he is having a lot of expensive clothes, having a lot of expensive items, adornments, and jewelries and etc., and everything is there, so they might think that he is a rich person. And after the occasion, now he is going on the road, and they might even think, the others who are seeing him also may think that he is a rich person. But unfortunately, now the owners may approach him, and they are asking to return all the ornaments, all the clothes. Now again, so this person becomes a poor man who doesn't have even a cloth to wear, maybe. So likewise, Buddha mentioned, so these sensual pleasures are like borrowed goods. They don't really belong. They are very short-lived, and all the sensual pleasures are very short-lived. They are like borrowed goods. Now next, there's another simile with the simile of fruits on a tree. Now this is another way that Buddha explained. Now assume that there is a very large tree which is full of fruits, and there is a hungry person coming in the same direction, and he noticed this particular tree. It has a lot of fruits, but unfortunately there are no fruits under the tree. None has fallen. Now he is thinking to himself, okay, none of the fruits are available under the tree. I am quite hungry. Many fruits are available in the branches. So let me climb the tree and get those fruits so that I will be able to overcome hunger. Now he is climbing the tree and he is going to an upper branch. Now he start catching the fruits, plucking the fruits, and then going to eat. At the same time, another man approaching the same tree. He is also hungry. And by the way, he is having an axe also. So when he approached there, he also understood, okay, there are no fruits at all under the tree, and he too is quite hungry. But the tree is full of fruits. And he is now thinking, this tree is full of fruits. No fruits are available under the tree. I also don't know how to climb the tree. So let me cut the tree. So once the tree is cut, all the fruits are mine. So let me cut the tree, and he start now cutting the tree. Now Buddha is asking from the monks, what is going to happen to the first man? If he quickly does not come down, what is going to happen to him? Now monks are answering, Bhante, if he doesn't quickly come down, so he'll be in big trouble, because the second man is now cutting the tree. So the first man has to come down, otherwise he'll be fall from the tree and he may even die. So therefore Buddha mentioned these sensual pleasures are like that. So when you own something, when you are enjoying some sensual pleasures, sometimes the others may be jealous of you, and they also want to acquire that. They may even use their forceful ways, strategies to acquire that. If you are not letting go that, then you will be in a big trouble. So this is quite evident in today's terms. So many people are going through maybe a lot of economic problems, and they are trying to acquire what the others have, and maybe in force or even by stealing, robbing. So those things are quite common. So therefore here also with the simile of the fruit tree, again Buddha highlights that the sensual pleasures are something like that. And there's another simile called simile of the butcher's knife and block. Butcher's knife and block. Now you know when a butcher want to cut say a piece of meat, again and again he is using a block to cut it. But unfortunately it is not only the piece of meat being cut, that flesh being cut, it may even penetrate and ultimately cut the block as well. So it is penetrating further. It does not stop at the necessary level. And this butcher can't simply stop the knife. He is simply cutting. So when he is cutting, actually it may go through the flesh and ultimately hit the block. So as far as I understand through this simile, so what Buddha want to highlight is it is not merely that the external physical senses that is being sort of satisfied. Ultimately, what is going to harm is very much like your mind. All these sensual pleasures, when we are enjoying, it has a great impact on our mind. It may pollute the mind. It may have a significant impact on the mind. Suppose that you are trying to maintain a celibate life and all of a sudden you start enjoying kind of a sensual pleasure. So it may started very much like a very innocent kind of enjoyment, but it can grow and ultimately it can even lose your celibacy. So such danger is there. It doesn't stop at the necessary levels. Probably you may not be in a position to stop it after it has caught momentum. Because when we start the sensual pleasure, enjoying some sort of sensuality, probably we may be starting at a very low level, but the tendency in the mind may grow and ultimately you are fully involved with that, and ultimately you even lose your celibacy. These are also quite common things. Say for example, you have kind of a relationship with a person. You simply write a letter, you simply talk. It may now further grow. Now you start touching, now you start kissing and all these things, and it can even lead to the sexual intercourse. So there are no limits in that sense. It may even penetrate the typical ethics, and it can go away from ethics, and even it can danger the norms, and ultimately you may end up with kind of a transgression. And then there's another simile with the simile of the sword stake. This is something that I still couldn't understand. Actually, I couldn't find much detail about the simile. So the sword stake. So as far as I can see, a person is bound to a stake, and then another person is using a sword and cutting his limbs. So this is a little difficult simile for me. I don't know what is the real sort of metaphorically what Buddha want to highlight there. So very much like maybe he's being bound to that stake and he has no any kind of escape from that. So could be that being trying to highlight. And then another simile of the snake's head. So simile of the snake's head. So this can be somewhat understood where snake's head. So if one is trying to touch a snake's head, then definitely that snake may bite. Yeah. The snake may bite the person. So maybe something like that, because the sensual pleasures are something like that. When you are trying to acquire, when you are trying to enjoy that, the pleasures starts eating that man. Eating in the sense destroying his goodness, destroying his maybe precepts, celibacy, whatever the good things. So now he is no more maintaining celibacy, no more maintaining monkhood, no more maintaining a kind of a very pleasant type of mind. Because when you are enjoying any kind of sensual pleasure, your mind being polluted, your mind has to have lustful thoughts. Mind has to have kind of a burning kind of lust when you are going through a very low level of engagement, sexual engagement. So likewise, with these different similes, Buddha mentioned, Blessed One has stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more. Now this is how other monks are advising Venerable Aritta, but you can see still Venerable Aritta is unable to get rid of his pernicious view. Yet although pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by those bhikkhus in this way, the bhikkhu Aritta, formerly of the vulture killers, still obstinately adhered to that pernicious view and continued to insist upon it. Now you can see, on the other hand, he may have taken one view. So that view is quite pernicious and he is strongly holding that. Now this is another area that we can explore, how mind is taking such a pernicious view. It is not immediately one is coming to that level, but it happens progressively, step by step. So that is where the vipallasa, the distortions of the mind, are quite significant. When we are thinking about something, when we are imagining about something, we think that they are permanent, they are beautiful, they are satisfactory, and they belong to me, and they are under my control, and they are quite beautiful. So likewise, we are having such kind of a wrong perception, not knowing their impermanence, not knowing their unsatisfactory nature, not knowing their non-governable nature. And we couldn't penetrate inside. We simply have taken the surface value. We simply have taken the outside look. We couldn't see deeper. We didn't have wise reflection, yoniso manasikara. So as a result of that, we simply see only the outside appearance, only the outside beauty, and we think that we may get a lot of pleasures. We think that we may get a lot of satisfaction. We think that things are permanent, belong to me. I can possess them. So likewise, these are the wrong, distorted views that we typically have. So with that, we start thinking. So from Sanya Vipallasa, we are going to the Chitta Vipallasa. Now, by taking wrong data, by taking wrong signs, marks, etc. to the mind, based upon that, we start thinking again and again. Now thinking. Now the thinking also now to some extent distorted, because that thinking is based upon distorted information, distorted data, details. Now thinking also is now in a wrong direction. Now you are thinking, okay, I may get more satisfaction, these things are permanent, things are under my control. So likewise you may be thinking, and that Chitta Vipallasa may lead to the pernicious view, that is the Ditti Vipallasa. Now you can't get rid of it. Now mind is completely under the influence of that strong thinking, wrong thinking, or we can call it as the Ditti Vipallasa, distorted view, completely distorted view, pernicious view. So this is how you can see. So once it comes to the mind, or when it is strongly adhered to the mind, so the person who is having it is completely helpless. He can't even get rid of that. Even when others are coming and trying to instruct him, he is unable to overcome that. Now these other monks are trying to convince him using various similes, using various teachings, but this Venerable Aritta unable to overcome that. So he strongly have a wrong belief that all these sensual pleasures is not harmful. Even if I am making use of them, even if I am associating them, there is no harm to my celibate life. Now we need to remember that he is a monk and he is supposed to maintain a celibate life, but now slowly he is trying to start challenging the Buddha's teaching, the Vinaya rules, and now he is trying to have his own wrong view, and he stands for that. And other monks are trying to convince, but he is not convinced. Now what happened? Actually, this is where one Vinaya rule is established. When other monks are again and again trying to convince him, if this particular monk is not ready to accept it, then the other monks can enforce him to a Vinaya rule. So basically, Kvepaniya Kamma, what you call as the abolishment, is no more considered as a true monk, so he is temporarily suspended. So such Vinaya rule can be established, can be enacted to this kind of a person. If other monks are going and approaching him, and for the 3 times if he is refusing to accept, so his monkhood can be suspended by a motion. It's a Vinaya discipline, so one can other monks can do that. So with respect to this incident, it has happened. It is available in the Vinaya Pitaka. Anyway, now these monks, even after doing that, now informing the Buddha. Now they go and inform the Buddha. Since the bhikkhus were unable to detach him from that pernicious view, they went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side and told him all that has occurred. Now they explained the whole thing to the Buddha, and now Buddha asked Venerable Aritta to come and meet him. Then the Blessed One addressed a certain bhikkhu thus: "Come, bhikkhus, tell the bhikkhu Aritta, formerly the vulture killers, in my name that the teacher calls him." Now Buddha summoned him. Now Venerable Aritta approached the Blessed One, the Buddha. And now once he approached the Buddha, now Buddha is asking the same question: is it true that you are holding this kind of a wrong view? And Venerable Aritta accepted it. Exactly so, Venerable Sir. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, those things called obstructions by the Blessed One are not able to obstruct one who engages in them. Now he admits that he is still maintaining the wrong view in front of the Buddha. Now Buddha starts blaming him, strongly criticizing him. "Misguided man, to whom have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma in that way?" Now Buddha is asking from Aritta, where did you listen this kind of wrong teaching? Did I ever say so? "Misguided man, have I not stated in many ways how obstructive things are obstructions, and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them? I have stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering and despair, and that the danger in them is still more." So Buddha also now repeats the same thing, same similes, same instructions, but already the other monks also have tried, and Buddha also now try to further convince Venerable Aritta. And here we can understand Buddha is quite confirm, Buddha is quite stern in here to alleviate all these wrong views from this particular monk. He doesn't want to give any chance to spread a wrong teaching. So this is very interesting part, where how the teacher, the Buddha, want to have a very perfect teaching, because he has preached the Dhamma and he doesn't want to misrepresent that. He doesn't want to misinterpret that. Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Bhikkhus, what do you think? Has this bhikkhu Aritta, formerly of the vulture killers, kindled even a spark of wisdom in this Dhamma and discipline?" So after explaining things to Aritta, and now Buddha is asking from other monks, "What do you think, monks? So this is this venerable has any type of wisdom?" Then other monks say, "No. How could he, Venerable Sir? No, Venerable Sir." Now here Buddha is trying to convince Venerable Aritta in the presence of other monks, and he is asking questions from other monks, getting the answer from them. Now Aritta is very much like helpless, because Buddha, that as the teacher, now he has a lot of other audience, other fellow monks, followers, and they are all telling the truth to the Buddha, and only Aritta, trying to defend his wrong view, have no support. Now when this was said, the bhikkhu Aritta, formerly of the vulture killers, sat silent, dismayed, with shoulders drooping, and head down, glum and without response. Then knowing this, the Blessed One told him, "Misguided man, you will be recognized by your own pernicious view. I shall question the bhikkhus on this matter." Now after understood that now Aditya has become helpless and no support for him, and there is no response from him, and his head is now down, because maybe he is now trying to understand he alone can't win. Buddha and the Sangha is in one side, so he alone can't win this argument. So he is now very much like completely silent. And here, then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Bhikkhus, do you understand the Dhamma taught by me, as this bhikkhu Arita, formerly of the vulture's killers, does when by his wrong grasp, his misrepresents us, injures himself and stores up much demerit? No, humble sir. For in many ways the Blessed One has stated how obstructive things are obstructions, and how they are able to obstruct one who engages in them. The Blessed One has stated now again and again, now the same thing is repeated. So other monks are reiterating what Buddha has mentioned. So Buddha has mentioned in one way, and all the other monks have understood that properly, but only Venerable Arita has misunderstood that. So here we can see how Buddha wants sternly to represent the correct Dhamma, represent his true teaching. He doesn't want a monk to misrepresent him or to have a distorted view regarding the Dhamma. A monk should not distort the Dhamma, on the other hand. So Dhamma, what Buddha has mentioned, what Buddha has preached, has to be understood properly, and again has to be preached properly according to the teaching. But one can't have one's own representation. One can't have one's own misrepresentation or interpretation. Then completely kind of a distortion going to happen to the Dhamma. So here we can see how strongly Buddha trying to correct Venerable Arita by getting evidence from the other monks, so that everybody have the same view, everybody have the correct representation of the Dhamma. So when Buddha asked that question, the other all monks are answering the same thing, that what Buddha taught correctly. And then Buddha mentioned, "Good bhikkhus, it is good that you understand the Dhamma taught by me, and all the sensual pleasures that I have mentioned are with less satisfaction and with lot of and it can lead to obstructions to the sensual, to the spiritual life. And I have stated that sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering, etc., etc. Now all these now Buddha further repeats, and very much trying to convince Venerable Arita. At the end of this part of the section, there's a very interesting statement added to the Sutta, because that one can engage in sensual pleasures without sensual desires, without perceptions of sensual desire, without thoughts of sensual desire. That is impossible. So this is a very, very interesting statement. In Pali it is mentioned like, "Sovata bhikkhave anyatreva kamehi anyatra kama sanyaya anyatra kama vitakkehi kama patisevisantiti netantanang vijjati." So that means if one is engaged with any kind of a sensual pleasure, particularly here we can consider it as a sexual pleasure, if he is telling that I don't have any perceptions of sensual pleasure, I don't have any sensual desires, and I don't have even thoughts of sensual desire, even though I am associating or enjoying this sensual pleasure, so such is not possible. That means if one is engaged with sexuality, engaged with sexual intercourse, or strong kind of transgression level sensual pleasures, that means he's definitely being influenced by sensual desire. He's going through a lot of sensual desire related thoughts, thinking, and he already has perceptions related to the sensual desire. So that very much means that his mind is completely now lustful. There are lustful thoughts, there are lustful perceptions, there are lustful desires. Without that, he can't bodily involve with a sexual activity. So that's a statement lastly mentioned in this particular section. So with that, I like to conclude today's sutta teaching session. We need to further and further discuss this sutta. This is a little long sutta. And if you have any question, we can answer.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu. Bhante, there is a written question here.
Right.
Most Venerable Bhante, when we speak of sensual pleasures in lay life, does anything which pleases your five senses come under sensual pleasure and contain the dangers mentioned, even basic things, switching on a fan, eating tasty food, etc.? Thank you, Bhante. Much merits to you.
Yeah, that's what I want to highlight at the beginning of the sutta. So when we are under the subject of sensual desire, so we need to see whether it's a true requirement or are we driven by a sensual desire. So as you said, suppose now it is quite heat and you feel uncomfortable and a fan is available and you have the desire to switch on the fan. And if it is obvious, now the room is quite heaty and a lot of discomfort is available, you are suffering, there is sweating and all uncomfortable environment is there, but the fan is available. So at that time, switching on the fan, I don't think you are going through some sort of a sensual desire driven activity, but very much like the requirement has arisen. So Buddha doesn't want us to go through some kind of a what you call Attakila yoga. What's the English term for that? Attakila yoga? Kind of.
I don't know that term.
What's that very interesting term is there in English? Kind of willfully make you discomfortable, uncomfortable. Rather, Buddha's approach here is very much like more human. So that's why even, say for example, when Buddha established the Vinaya rule that monks should not eat afternoon, only during the dawn time, and then the noon time monks are allowed to eat the staple food. During the rest of the day they can't have. So what happened is that monks start starving and monks start having, in today's terms, like the ailments like gastritis. So then that information or that evidence is given to the Buddha, and then he, out of compassion, he mentioned, okay, now you can have not the staple food but something nutritious which are made up with honey, ghee, and like butter. So likewise he even allowed certain amount of medicine which has a lot of nutriment value, nutriment content. So that means, so in terms of the Vinaya is concerned, it is not meant for kind of strictly starving a person or going through a kind of strong striving type of thing. Rather, it's a kind of a moderate and comfortable way of living, a simple way of living, rather than kind of suffering. Therefore, we can't, and that's why, if we consider certain ascetics, other ascetics, so they even given up clothes. And when they are walking, they have to sort of sweep the floor when they are walking. And they may eat like a dog. So they may eat only what is being offered to their hand. So likewise they have gone to the other extreme and thinking that they have to behave like that. And Buddha did not acquire that, or Buddha did not accept that. Rather, Buddha mentioned, okay, as monks you have to maintain this life, maintain this existence, and therefore you have to go in alms round, and these are the ways that you need to go in the alms round. It has to be a proper way while going through the alms round. And he mentioned, okay, don't look at on others, simply be closer to the house, and then the others may come and offer you something, and don't overuse it. Just go to the next house. So likewise, a kind of a very beautiful etiquette is maintained, and therefore it's a kind of a way, a very beautiful way. Buddha has taken a kind of moderate approach, not inflicting suffering on monks. So therefore, when we have kind of a real need, we can't say it is based upon a sexual or sensual drive that we are working on it. If it is a real need, we can go ahead. But the thing is, we need to know the limit. On the other hand, now say we need to sort of differentiate what is a sensual desire related need, or what is the real discomfort related need. Now say for example, you already had your lunch and it is maybe a good lunch, and even at the evening, suppose you get a strong desire, okay, I need to have an ice cream, a chocolate, or whatever it is. Now probably it can be a little sensual desire related need that you need to understand, because probably you are not currently suffering, you are not currently having any hunger, you already had good food, you already had good meal. So then why am I desiring to have an ice cream or have another whatever delicious food? Maybe driven by a desire, kind of a greediness. So similarly, we need to actually be mindful what are the desires and how the desires are trying to overwhelm us, or what are the real requirements which that I need to satisfy.
Thank you, Bante. There is another written question that was emailed. I just sent it to you as well. It says, respected Bante, the 5 khandha are often translated as 5 aggregates. An aggregate is a whole formed by combining several separate elements. So what are the separate elements of which the rupa aggregate is formed of? What are the separate elements of which the Vedana aggregate is formed of? Same questions for the other 3 aggregates, Sanya, Sankhara, and
Vijnana. Yeah, actually, when it calls as khandha, as a kind of typically translated as aggregate, a combination of many things. Now we consider the rupa. It is the physicality. The matter, and in the present form there are the different say earth element, water element, air element, and then the heat element. So this is another categorization according to the Dhamma. The physical world is categorized with respect to these qualities. Earth element has the hardness, grossness, smoothness, lightness, heaviness. So those kind of qualities are there, characteristics are there. And then the water element has the fluidity, flowing nature, cohesion. So those characteristics are there. Air element has the movement, that characteristics. And then the heat element has the temperature, that is the cold or heat. Now these are the physical world representing characteristics. So wherever all these characteristics are available, we can call it's a rupa khandha. So it's a vast area. Now even though we simplify this to these 4 categories, these 4 elements, the whole physical world consists of all these 4 elements. Therefore, that is why it's a khandha, it's an aggregate. So, the representation may be very simple, but the manifestation is very, very huge, very, very large. And again, Buddha introduced 11 dimensions to this. Atita anagata paccuppanna. So that means whatever the form element happened in the past, that is also included. Whatever going to happen in the future, that is also included. What is happening right now, that is also included. Then ajjatta bahidda. So all the internal matter available, that is also considered. All the external matter available, that is also considered. And then gross or hina panita, that means whatever the gross form of form element, that is included. And what is the subtle form of elements, that is also included. And then dura santika, that means whatever far away form element available, that is also included. Whatever close matter available, that is also included. So likewise 11 dimensions are also included here. So that means all the physical world we can consider as the form element. And similarly the feelings. Now feelings, how it becomes an aggregate, we need to understand now the very primary level of, or the basic types of feelings may be the pleasurable feeling, painful feeling and the equanimous feeling. But how many types of pleasurable feelings are there? Say for example, having a good meal, you may have a pleasurable feeling. And say while you are sitting and having a good meditation session, again you may have a blissful state, and that also a pleasurable feeling. Suppose you are having a good bath, maybe a pleasurable feeling. And maybe you are enjoying a movie, maybe a pleasurable feeling. So likewise, if we consider the pleasurable feelings, how many pleasurable feelings are available? So that means it's endless amount of pleasurable feelings are there. Similarly, endless amount of painful feelings are there. Endless amounts of neutral feelings are also there. All these, either physical, either mental, are coming under the aggregate of feeling. Vedana upadana khandha. So all these feelings are subject to clinging. That's the problem actually. Feelings themselves are not the problem. We start trying to acquire them, and we start trying to possess them, we start trying to claim them, we want to hold them, we want to grasp them. That is the problem. And similarly the perception, so that is endless. I mean, how many perceptions are there? How many languages, how many marks, how many signs, how many different words, how many different ways of communication. Now these are coming on, all comes under the perception aggregate. And the formations, say how many thoughts we have, how many emotions we have. Now when we consider the thoughts, maybe lustful thoughts, jealousy thoughts, wholesome thoughts, unwholesome thoughts. So likewise, endless amounts of thoughts are there. That comes under the sankhara aggregate. And then vijnana. So with respect to the 5 senses, we can make use of 5 senses to sort of contact with the outside world. When they are in contact, there is a cognition happen. When eye and form are in line, when they are properly aligned, okay, the eye consciousness happens. So the knowledge part happens, the knowing part happens within you. Okay, I am seeing. When a sound is there, the hearing part happens. Okay, I am hearing, I am listening. Then when there are odors available, then you are capable of smelling. When tastes are available, you are able to taste. And when there are tangibles available, you are able to contact them, know them. And when again thoughts are available, you are able to know them. So likewise, many different possibilities are there to your senses and to the mind to know your interaction between the outside world. And this comes under the Vijnana aggregate, the consciousness aggregate. Now therefore, so the whole experience of ours can be simplified into 5 aggregates, but but it includes everything. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Okay, for the next one, I'd like to invite Chita Devi.
Thank you, Jennifer. I just wanted to touch on something that you said passing, Bhante, about this. Somebody had asked about the fan, because it's many years ago, when I was attending a retreat, there was somebody who didn't want to use fans and lights, and I was saying that at the time of the Buddha, they did use it. But that is, in this age, this 21st century, as you said, using a fan is, if it is a very hot day, then that's not a problem, because the Buddha did not encourage self-mortification.
And that's right, exactly. So that is the word actually I want to highlight. Self-mortification is not something that Buddha want to insist. Rather, he even hadn't insist on the other sensual gratification either. So how we find out the moderate level? So that is where we need to use common sense. In the other hand, so it is not the self mortification, it is not the sensual gratification. Rather, as a layperson, say you are adherent to the 5 precepts, and then as a monk, say we have to adhere to the monk's discipline. So that is also well explained. So it doesn't mean self-mortification either. So if one thinks, okay, monkhood is self-mortification, that is also not true. So monks are allowed to eat, monks are allowed to live in a house, or rather a hut or kuti, a temple, and all the necessary requirements are there. Because we are humans. So therefore Buddha didn't want to. That's why even when Venerable Devadatta was asking till the end of the life, to the whole life, that monks have to be a vegetarian, a monk have to be a person who has to live under a tree, a monk has to depend on alms round, and only through the abandoned clothes, pansukulika chivara. So likewise, he has gone to the very extreme. Buddha denied that. You can see Buddha has taken a kind of moderate approach, where he mentioned if someone wants to do that, no problem. You can use it and see whether it is useful for your path. It also depends. Now, Buddha's Vinaya rules and Buddha's morality actually is not limited to the rules. Rather, what is highlighted is when you are adhering to those rules, we need to recognize, are these adherences, are these observances helping to grow my wholesome attitude, helping to grow my wholesome skills. So that is the deciding factor.
Because Buddha also went through self-mortification, and he clearly understood that was not the way to go.
Exactly.
And that we should be going in the middle path.
Exactly.
And even the Buddha's monastery in Savasri was richly decorated by all his followers, and but that didn't bother him or the other monks, because it was seeing as seeing.
Yes.
So I think that it is because of ignorance that some of us say things and do things because of ignorance. Isn't that right, Bhante?
Yeah, and again the thing is, sometimes, certain people like self-mortification. So they even the resources are there, and again the real requirement is also there. Still they don't want to use it. So that's a different story. That's a wrong mentality. But on the other hand, when things are there and there is no requirement, if you are going and acquire it, so that is also wrong. Suppose you are in a say very comfortable environment, and you have a fan and there is no such heat. Anyway, you have a lot of rich devotees, and you go and ask one of the devotees to fix a air conditioner at your kuti. So that is not acceptable. that is beyond limits. Now that is common sense in that sense, because you are not uncomfortable and you already have a fan or whatever the comfortable living, all the possibilities are there. Even since you have the capacity to fix a air conditioner, that means going beyond the limits. So that is going, you say for example, going for the luxurious. So likewise, case by case, we need to understand what is the limit, what is the typical social norm. So likewise, and again, we need to think about the Vinaya rules as well as the monks. And if there are no a governing rule or principle is available, Buddha again has advocated another measure to use the available rule and compare it with today's norms.
Yes, Bhante, because you said a little while ago, if whatever you are doing is going to improve your practice, if it's going to allow you to follow the 5 precepts and to get rid of your fetters and your defilements, then what you are doing is the correct thing.
Correct. Yes. That's why actually that is being highlighted in another sutta. So in one occasion, Buddha is asking from Venerable Ananda. Now Venerable Ananda, all these different adherences are there. Silabbata Paramasa. Different kinds of formalities are there, different kinds of observances are there. And now Buddha is asking from Venerable Ananda, are these all observances, are these all adherences are helpful? And then Venerable Ananda say, Bhante, I can't give a definite answer here. And they actually depends. If certain adherences and the observances are helpful to develop your spiritual qualities, wholesome qualities, then those adherences, those observances are good. And if those adherences and observances are not going to develop any wholesome qualities, then those adherences, those observances are not good. So that is the criteria that Venerable Ananda is telling. So therefore, it is not all the adherences and observances are good, but if some adherence or observance is helpful to uplift your moral conduct, uplift your spiritual qualities, wholesome spiritual qualities, and those adherences, those observances are good.
Yes, Bhante, that's exactly right. Because there are some people who are some serious meditators. Some of them are quite austere and very rigid and so forth. But of course, we are not like that. But we are trying our best. But I think that if we go in the middle path and do the things that help our practice, then I think we are on the right side.
Yeah, yes. I also believe so, because I mean even when you meditate, you need some amount of comfort.
Exactly.
Yeah, otherwise, without comfort, without body being comfortable, your mind may not concentrate. Simple as that.
Yes, Bhante. Especially as one gets older, also, the back problems and the knee problems and everything else. So you have to have a certain amount of comfort for those places, in order to have the mind calm and able to do what we are doing.
Correct. That's why even at Nissarana, when we are say conducting retreats, so some support is given to use stools, chairs, benches and cushions. Everything is available, but it doesn't mean that one is overusing them. They are using them for a purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because if you are bettering your spiritual life and you are bettering your improving your progress, then that's the answer, Bhante.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, most revered Bhante, how do we deal with desire for unnecessary food, greed?
Yeah, so that's why we need to understand what's the moderate amount of food. So that is why Buddha mentioned moderate in eating. Ahare mattanyuta. That is one interesting quality. But we need to understand what is the appropriate food right now. Suppose you are suffering from an illness, say you have diabetics, and you should know what are the foods that is appropriate or suitable for you, and what is not appropriate, unsuitable for you. So accordingly, we need to select the food. And on the other hand, we need to know the amount of food. So that is where again the moderation in the eating is coming to the picture. So if we overeat, again it is not going to be comfortable. Rather, it becomes uncomfortable. Then you can't properly concentrate, you can't meditate, you can't work, because you feel lethargic and you feel uncomfortable. And on the other hand, you need a necessary amount of food. You can't you can't avoid food either, because this body needs nutrition. So therefore you need to eat as well. So likewise, we need to understand the purpose of eating. So if we know the purpose of eating, then no problem. That's why actually for monks particularly, Buddha mentioned, while you are eating, remember what's the purpose of eating. It is not to enjoy for the enjoyment. It is not for the to indulgence. Rather, just for the maintenance of this body, you are eating. And for the continuation of the monk's life, you are eating. Because this life is dependent on the food, nutriment. And again, as you said, when there is a greed in the mind, so rather than fulfilling that greed, we need to little restrain in that sense. So if you are already had a good food, good meal, and still if there is a desire to eat some more, if you know the moderation, and probably you could remember that what has happened yesterday or day before yesterday because of your overeating, if you can remember the consequences, probably you can little control yourself, restrain yourself, not going to overeating. So likewise, we ourselves have to be teachers in here, where we should know our individual comfort level. So what is the necessary amount of food I need? What would be the overindulgence? What would be the overeating level? So that individually we need to understand, decide, and accordingly we need to adjust.
Thank you, Bante. I have a more general question. So, Bante, earlier you mentioned when a desire arises, we can pay attention to what is it that we would desire for, whether it's appropriate or not. And this is my words and my understanding, that how I guess that desire tries to control and overwhelm us. And I guess in cases where, the desire does take over, we can still pay attention to, I guess, while we are indulging in our desire, like our 5 aggregates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then is it through this repetition of the mindfulness through the whole process, whether we succeed or not in overcoming our desires, but just applying mindfulness throughout the entire process, that will help to uproot
Correct.
our desire?
Correct.
Okay.
That's also true. So that's why the desires may be sometimes overwhelming, overpowering, and our simple recognition is not enough to stop that. But as you said, under the mindfulness, if we are continuing it, so slowly the overwhelming power become less and less. So that means we are slowly developing a capacity not to get indulged in it. Rather, even though the body is involved with something, we are able to come out of that and observe it. Even though the mind is going through a little bit of desire, we are slowly able to come out of that and observe it, objectively look at it. So this slowly dilutes the defilement. This slowly fades off the defilement. The next time when the same defilement arises, it may not have such amount of overwhelming power.
Thank you, Bante.
So if there are no more questions, then we'll wind up the session. And today also we have spent about 1.5 hours discussing the Buddha's teaching and listening to that. And whatever the merits that we have accumulated, let's share with all the past relatives, with all the celestial beings and whoever in need of merits. Let's wish these merits help us also to attain path fruition Nibbana. While keeping these good wishes in our mind, let's recite the traditional verses. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca bummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu sasanang. Akasattha ca bummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu desanang. Akasattha ca bummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu mamparang. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā huntu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā huntu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā huntu ñātayo. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo. Satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo. Satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo. Satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.